World This Week with me, William Hall. Our top stories this week. In South Africa, questions are raised as President Trump skips the G20 summit. Also on the programme, peace negotiations in Ukraine face hurdles as Trump's plan faces criticism. And the world's climate community faces a shock as the COP30 summit produces a mediocre peace plan. But first, Sasha Dixon reports on this year's G20 summit.
Good afternoon. This weekend, world leaders met in Johannesburg, South Africa for the 2025 G20 summit. This year's meeting marked the first held on the African continent against the backdrop of rising geopolitical tensions, heightened conflict, and deepened economic uncertainty and global inequality. The summit works to address major issues related to the global economy, such as sustainable development and international financial stability. The leaders' declaration states that it is only with peace that true sustainability and prosperity can be found. But who is the G20? The group comprises 19 countries from across the continent, as well as two regional bodies, the European Union and the African Union. These members together represent 85% of global gross domestic product and over 75% of international trade, as well as 2/3 of the world's population. This year, the USA boycotted the summit, objecting to the adoption of the declaration. Trump chose to abstain from the summit due to what he claims to be an attack on South Africa's white minority through large-scale killings and land grabs. It should be noted that this claim is widely discredited. Ironically, next year's G20 summit is set to take place in the US, held at President Trump's golf course in Florida. Due to his absence at this meeting, the ceremonial transfer of the presidency will not be able to take place. Where some leaders, including Brazilian President da Silva, felt that this didn't matter much, others, namely German Chancellor Merz, felt that it wasn't a good decision for the US to abstain.
This past week, hopes for a Ukrainian peace process have been raised as President Zelensky has signalled his openness to consider President Trump's peace plan.
No matter how complex history between Ukraine and Russia, breaking a war and violation beyond international law should not be accepted. What we need to figure out is whether a huge stakeholder towards this conflict is a peacemaker or not. In this term, peacemaker refers to a huge powerful person who engage and respect the international laws and trying to stop this war peacefully within the framework of international laws. The policy of the US President Trump regarding to Ukraine is described as a peacemaker's policy, but does not satisfy the standards of international law. By interrupting and conditionally supplying the military aid limited package to Ukraine, he compels the Ukraine government to give up their territory to Russia, and that is against the law of nations. And the principles being a peacemaker require the protection of territorial integrity, non-coercive policy against the state under assault, and the observance of the collective law principles. The policy of the United States president might be able to end the war soonly, but it will provoke unstable peace.
Next up, Ken reports on the outcome of the COP30 summit this year in Brazil, which produced a final text that did not mention any new steps on fossil fuels.
COP30 ended with a historic pathway to 1.5 degrees, but critics say it's long on enforcement and short on enforceability. The headline pledge, a global transition away from fossil fuels, stopped short of a phase-out. This became the flashpoint of the entire agreement. For climate-vulnerable nations, this is more than semantics. A phase-out would have stopped fossil fuels in their tracks. A transition gives room for delay and flexibility. Brazil, the host nation, pushed hard for consensus, but oil-producing states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE resisted firm language, while the US and EU settled for what negotiators called the best text politically achievable. Activists argue that political achievability isn't the same as scientific necessity. Finance was another fault line. Developing countries have promised a new fund to help them cut emissions and adapt, but the agreement doesn't clarify who pays, how much, or when the money arrives. Many delegates left Belém, saying the fund exists on paper, not in the bank. Outside the venue, campaigners accuse richer nations of repacking old commitments in new branding. Several groups say the agreement repeats the cycle of past COPs, ambitious targets, limited accountability, and slow movement from the world's biggest polluters. President Lula da Silva framed COP30 as a turning point for the Amazon, arguing the region is central to achieving global climate goals and must be at the center of worldwide financing efforts. But analysts warn that without firm timelines and enforcement, the Amazon restoration pledges risk becoming symbolic. Deforestation has slowed under Lula, but not enough to put Brazil on track for net zero deforestation by 2030. COP30 leaves a promise to move away from fossil fuels, but no mandate, a funding mechanism, but no guaranteed money, and a global agreement that marks progress but still falls short of what climate scientists demand.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's World This Week. As always, we encourage you to read more about the stories you've heard here today from reputable sources online or in print. If you want to cover any more stories in the future, be sure to reach out. Goodbye.